Wuthering Waves releases today. I mean, literally like tonight. I'm talking tonight. I'll be streaming, but point being is that Wuthering Waves releases tonight. I want to go over the tier list, or rather, how do I put this? I want to go over the tier list that Prydwen has, and then I want to give some thoughts and opinions while building my own tier list so that I can, a little weird to say, I feel like the beta did not do the game justice, if that makes sense. Let me explain it. For what it's worth, during the beta, there were a lot of people that were able to play test, but there were a lot of people who were not able to play test. And I understand that a lot of the community is coming from Genshin Impact. As much as that sucks to hear, majority of Wuthering's community as of right now is Genshin Impact, whether that be Genshin Impact rejects or people who are actively playing Genshin Impact. The point being is that the way they look at games and the way they play games completely different than the way that the Punishing Gray Raven community would play games, or someone like myself being adept in multiple different genres of game, in particular Elden Ring or Soulsborne titles and fighting games. During the beta, some of the characters were messed up. Their kits weren't properly inputted into the beta. Like for instance, Sanhua had Lingyang's level up stuff or his ascension, not the materials, but whatever. Point being is that everything was all jumbled up and mixed up. There were also some things that just didn't work, like Jianxian, for instance, with her shielding, and it was really bad. Now, coming into the full release of the game, we do have some more information on who got what, who changed what. I can't go over that just yet because that is considered leaking, but I will be able to assess my thoughts based on the information, and I'll try and give it to you guys in a simple to understand manner as well. All of that said, I'm going to be able to use my fighting game mentality to adapt it to some of the characters. I was able to play some of the characters, and I do feel very strongly about them compared to what the rest of the community thinks. That sort of disclaimer out of the way, let's go over the tier list. Okay, so the reason I have the tier list set up this way is so that I can show you guys things in a bit more concise, consolidated manner, so that you're not spread across the screen and there's too much on the screen at one time. I also have Prydwen over here as well to be able to look at what they have going on in their tier list. And I've noticed that, like for instance, tier 0, like I said, you guys have a lot less information to look at once, so you can focus on what I'm talking about. I also have some of the weapons pulled up just so we can go over some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. And if gameplay is needed, I'll put that in there. As of right now, tier 0 is the top of the top. I won't go over Prydwen's criteria just yet. I'll save that for when the game is fully released and they finish updating whatever it is they're doing inside of the tier list. Because as you can see right now, this is based on a pre-release version, so we're waiting for the full thing. But if you do want to look at this, I'll have that in the description down below for you guys to read over this. I already know it, so a lot of this is going to be based off what I'm talking about. And just to be on the same page, if you will, a lot of what's happening with Prydwen is deeply rooted into the way that I play the game, or rather the way that I think about the game. So there's some common ground here between me and the Prydwen staff. So Rover, we're going to put Rover in the same spot. Just because they're the same character. I think Rover, as a free to play, this character is great. Tier 1 is easily where I would put this character. I don't think they're strong enough to go anything higher than tier 1, and sometimes I feel like they could even be tier 2. Looking at this purely from a free to play perspective, Rover has some of the how do I put it? In fighting games, we call it Ryu, right? There's Ryu and Ken, and you have all the things that you would want in a base kit to be able to perform every function or job that's required of you. And if you get really good at it, so what we call fundamentals or footsies, if you have very strong fundamentals, you can take Ryu from 0 to hero, right? Even if Ryu is low tier, people that have strong fundamentals, like Daigo has always played Ryu. I don't know why I said Ryu. They've always played Ryu, and they're able to win and beat almost anybody, give or take some of the matchups there, because he does still have bad matchups. In Wuthering Waves, you don't have to worry about matchups. You just have to worry about playing the character, the fundamentals of the game, and what this character excels at. Rover has everything in their kit at a base level. They even have something that's really cool and kind of slept on. It's being explored. I don't think it's being explored in the way that it should be explored yet, but that's just because not enough people had access to the beta. Rover has a time stop. I believe it's the outro skill, if I'm not mistaken, or it might be the ultimate. They're basically able to stop time for a few seconds. In those few, and it affects everybody. This affects mobs, a group of mobs that are affected in the same radius. This affects the elites, and then this also affects overlord bosses. And that's huge, to be able to stop someone from doing something just like that in that immediate moment. Big. So when you're playing this character, especially again as free to play, that's your main character, everyone's gonna have access to the character. They're a sword user, which means you can give them the free 5-star standard selector sword if you want to do that, which has a lot of energy regeneration rate, which is huge in this game. You can make do with this character. I think tier 1 is fine. That is what I'll consider the standard as of right now. Beyond that, we can go to Verina. Now, Verina is tier 0, and I understand this. I've explained this in a few other videos, but for those that are seeing this video first, Verina is the best support in the game. And I think she actually got buffed, if I'm not mistaken. Before, she gave you, I think it was just an attack percent increase on top of the healing that you got for about 30 seconds. You got a 15% attack increase. I think now they changed it, so she gives you attack and she gives you, what are we calling it in this game? all type damage deepen. I don't know why they ATDD. I don't know why we have that, but he gives you both now. So 2 forms of damage. Think of this for my Star Rail players. Think of this like the Ruan Mei of the game. Genshin, I honestly have no idea how to compare this. I guess Kazuha maybe, but Kazuha does shredding. He doesn't do shredding. So I don't know who to compare this to for my Genshin players. Unfortunately, if you play Genshin, you might be able to understand that. And then you can tell the chat, or you can tell the comments who that would be closer to. But I know this would be similar to Ruan Mei minus the healing factor. Having the ability to buff the entire team for 30 seconds, if not beyond that, depending on whatever relic set may come out in the future or weapons come out in the future, is huge. And she has very low on field time. In a game like this, field time is very important. Your DPS wants to have the most field time possible. If you don't have that and you're playing a bunch of characters, so 3, and they all want, I don't know, anywhere between 30 to 45 seconds worth of field time, your DPS rotations are going to be dog shit. So when you're playing a 3-cell, which 3-cell is just the Naruto way of saying a 3-man squad, right? If you're playing a 3-cell, then you're going to want to have Verina or maybe Baizhi, just a character that support that could buff up the entire team, and they don't take a lot of field time. That's very important. Next up, we have Encore, which I think low key, I think Encore is one of, if not the second strongest character in the game. I know that we're going to go over Jiyan, we're going to go over Calcharo, and I'll talk about them in a bit. But in Encore's case, Encore is a high execution character. Being a high execution character, some of the things that a lot of players just are not used to right now is skill. It's that skill check. It's a very hard thing to do, especially when it comes to executing what could be considered combos, cancels, animation cancels. And then Encore has a lot of that. Encore has long animations, but almost everything from what I've tested so far on the character, almost everything can be canceled out. The only things that cannot be canceled out are the things you don't want to cancel out of, but they can be switch tech, or you guys are calling it swap canceling or something like that. So if you're familiar with swap canceling, that's what switch tech is. If you're familiar with switch tech, then that's what swap canceling is. Same thing, doesn't matter what you call it. She has strong switch tech game, right? The switch tech opportunities, which is very big for her. She also has a cleave radius, cleave being instead of going in a vertical or directly in front of you like a gunshot or a sword slashing down, he cleaves like in JJK, right? Sukuna, I'm gonna cleave you, and he cuts all the way across horizontal, right? That's basically Encore. She has cleave. She has Sukuna's cleave, literally. And all of her attacks have that specific attribute attached to them, which is big, which makes her a mid-range character. So when she's not in her install is the transformative state. When you pop burst, she transforms. So when she's not in her install, she's in a mid-range. Okay, so here's the enemy, here's Encore. Enemy cannot touch me. I can touch the enemy. That's the perfect range for a lot of characters, which is great for her. The problem is because her animations are so long and they don't have a lot of hit stop to them, enemies can get hit and they can still move forward, which means they can get in your face. And that's where a lot of your animation cancels, your dodges are going to come into play, things like that. So as of right now, until we properly, and I think they buffed it or changed it, I'm not sure if this is correct, so I don't want to state this out loud, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Sanhua, I believe Sanhua got changed. So now Sanhua is going to directly buff Encore. Before, Encore did not have a direct buffer. Now I believe Sanhua is going to be the direct buffer, which is huge for this character. So that'll be really good to have that. And then if you do get Verina or Baizhi's free, you could probably make your 3-cell that way. If you don't want to play the 3-cell and you want to play a 2-core, you could do Encore plus Verina. You could do Encore plus Sanhua, but do note Sanhua is a very difficult character to play due to her forte skill, the mechanic on that. And when I say difficult, guys, I don't mean that this character is like balls to the wall crazy hard. I mean for the casual, average gacha game player who is not used to doing any type of crazy inputs and cancels and sliding their finger across the screen, or players that are not used to that. That is what I'm referring to as being difficult. It's difficult for them. If you're familiar with fighting games and all the other kind of stuff, it should not be too difficult for you. You just need to learn the proper rotations and things like that. Next is Jianxian. Now, Jianxian's in a weird case, right? I feel like personally, Jianxian is around here. Tier 0.5, maybe tier 1. The reason I say that is because Jianxian has not fully been explored. And just like I mentioned with some of the other characters having changes in their kit, Jianxian has a particular change that I have not been able to test yet. I don't think anyone can test it. What this change is very subtle. To a gacha game player, this probably wouldn't make any sense. I always reference Jam when I talk about Jianxian. She's a Guilty Gear character. Jam has this attribute, this mechanic in her kit where she does like a little chi gather and then she gains a level, and her whole thing is to be able to build up these levels while doing combos or getting a knockdown and just in a favorable position. Jianxian feels like that character, and right now it feels like a lot of the players are looking at Jianxian as a left click, like left click, left click, left click, left click, hold. Oh man, her shield takes too long, she's ass. And in reality, I just don't think they're playing the character correctly. I know that's a crazy claim to make, and so I don't really make that confidently because I have not played the character in the live server. But from what I've played on test and in beta, if this changes is correct. What the changes, by the way, guys, before during beta, the skill basically says holding down her shield, so her forte, whenever you gain shield, you hold it down for X amount of time and you'll get level 1 through 4, right? That's how strong the shield is. The change now is it says when doing blank, you gain X level of shield. And that gain is the key word. That's a subtle change, but very important. If it works the way that I think, and I'll test it tonight, ideally, or rather on paper, theoretically, what this means is that when I'm playing the character, and let's say that I do forte skill, and I do like just a base forte skill, I gain 1 level of shield. Let's say I do another combo, and I do it again. I do the forte skill again, and I gain another shield before the first shield expires. That would theoretically mean that I now have a level 2 shield because they would stat. If Jianxian works this way, the issues that people have will no longer be issues for a good Jianxian player. A strong fundamental Jianxian will be able to take this character from what I believe Prydwen has her at like tier 2 or something like that. Let me just double check. Yeah, see, Prydwen has her in tier 2. I believe he would jump up to tier 1, if not 0.5. Her damage isn't bad, and her kit is very well rounded. She gives herself a shield, she heals herself. She's literally a jack of all trades. Good damage, good heals, good shields, good movement. Not like crazy good movement, you know, like how maybe a Yinlin or a Danjin would have. Not crazy stuff like that, or even Alto. They have crazy movement, but she has good enough movement. Her attacks aren't as sluggish, and she has strong AoE. She's got great single target. A lot of Jianxian's kit is very strong. So having the proper player play this character, if it works the way that I'm thinking about, like Jam, she could be a tier 0.5 character, at least from what we have so far, right? The standards. So I want to put her here, but until I can test this properly, I'm going to put her right down here. Next is going to be Calcharo. Calcharo is easily, I want to tell you he's tier 0. I really want to tell you he's tier 0, but I can't because this dude exists. So for right now, Calcharo is tier 0.5. The reason I say that is because this character is cracked, especially with Yinlin. Like him plus Yinlin is a disgusting combo. Very cracked character, very good. Early game, a monster. Mid game, a monster. Late game, a monster. I will admit he has similar issues to Encore. They both require strong executive skills, right? You need some good execution to be able to fully pilot these characters. I understand that a lot of people, again, coming from Genshin, you can just left click your way to victory, do a skill, and that's the combo, right? You're done. In this game, that is not the case. Some characters are like that, but a majority of the 4 stars are definitely not like that. And a good amount of the 5 stars are not like that. You need to learn how to play these characters. And that's why I believe when I was telling you guys in a previous video about like, it's not a gacha, like, I mean, it is a gacha obviously, but it's not a character collecting type of gacha. You really want to focus on that one team or a few characters. I mean that for these specific reasons. Calcharo has in his kit, right, the slashes, the horizontal slashes, good range, great damage, and he has a stand. He also has an install, but he has a stand. The stand being like a JoJo stand or a Persona, right? He summons the Phantom Lightning dude or whatever, and then they have some type of bouncing back and forth between the enemy, right? So boom, 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 boom. You can trap the enemy, things like that. Very crazy good concepts. Outside of his install, he has the ability to do similar to Diluc, where you can do your skill 3 times, like 1, input some commands in between that, 2, inputs of commands in between that, and then 3, inputs of, well, I guess you would finish it off, right? You would do whatever you want, so you don't have to input commands, but the cooldown is short enough that it would work for your time period. Outside of the install, or rather inside of the install, my bad, when he's in install, you don't even need the skill because his base kit changes. He becomes faster, stronger. His actual attack animations get crazy, like crazy good range. They have crazy animations, crazy damage, and his stand is always active, so you're getting double the damage on top of that. But he does have some good switch tech opportunities. He also has some very good animation cancel or windows in order to be able to do that. And you need to understand what you're weaving in: his basic attack, his heavy attack, his skills, his going into his install, using the burst, using intro skills, combining that with your teammates. There's a lot that goes into Calcharo that's going to make him like a base player, like a base level Calcharo, just left clicking, like slashing. They're going to be down here at the bottom. But because he's so strong, he can't go any lower than this. He honestly can't go any lower than tier 1. Even if you don't play him correctly, he's still tier 1. If you start playing him correctly, tier 0.5. If you master this character, he's easily tier 0. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it in my head. Lingyang I have to put into tier 2 until otherwise proven. I have some theories on this character, basically that I think similar to Encore or even Jianxian. that this character slept on. I don't think he's fully explored. And him having aerial combat is huge, meaning that the enemy probably can't touch you, or most enemies can't touch you, but you can touch them. If he has full invulnerability, or even he's immune to being interrupting resistance or interrupt resistance, something like that. If he has that during the forte where he jumps on the drums and he bounces back and forth for about 10 seconds or so, that's going to be very strong for this character. Now, I do know that his multipliers got increased. I know that's one of the things that they did on the live server. So he has a strong damage buff now. I don't know if they changed his kit in any way, but I know he does a lot more damage. He already attacks very fast. So you have a fast punching character that can hit you at least 6 times before you hit them once. And then he has stronger damage. By default, I want to tell you he's tier 1. I really want to tell you he's tier 1. But again, I need to test this properly, because if his kit is clunky or he's not able to abuse certain iframes or invulnerabilities, that would put him in tier 2, because it would require you to do too much swapping. Next is Jiyan. Jiyan is absolutely tier 0. It's crazy. This character's dub. I really don't want to talk about this character, but I'm telling you guys right now, if you pull Jiyan, because I know a lot of us are going to skip him for Yinlin. If you pull Jiyan, signature weapon or not, this character is dummy good. He's cracked. People are looking at him as AoE. Even with, I think, Prydwen. Yeah, Prydwen has him as AoE and ult. Ignore this. Ignore the AoE. I'm not saying that he doesn't have it. I'm saying that it doesn't matter. The AoE is great for mobs, so he's a one-man team, right? He can take care of everything in every situation, no matter what. But because of the way AoE works in this game, particularly with Jiyan, Jiyan is able to, instead of like, okay, AoE normally hits multiple people, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in Jiyan's case, because of the way the animations work, they're ticks. So it's hitting everyone for everything. In the event you had 5 enemies around you and the dragon swirls around you 5 times, right? Every 5th or all 5 enemies are getting hit for the same thing. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. They're all getting hit for that for as long as it happens. So if you only have 1 enemy, he's still getting hit for a 1, 1, 1, 1. His damage is crazy. His attack animations are super fast. He has great combo cancels. He also has an install. And outside of install, similar to Calcharo, he has some crazy good combos, right? He can take you in the air, attack you a couple times in the air. You can switch tech in mid-air. That's something I didn't even like know about in the beta, because I couldn't play Jiyan during the beta. He can switch tech mid-air and then still allow your other character to combo while he's still doing whatever it was that he was doing in the air. He can also do combos that start you on the ground, go in the air, come back on the ground, or start you on the ground, go in the air, come back on the ground as you switch tech, and then someone launches them back in the air, and then the switch tech thing repeats. You switch back into Jiyan, and then you juggle them in the air. Jiyan's crazy good, bro. Like, I wasn't gonna pull this character. I know it sounds like I'm glazing, because I really wasn't gonna pull him. He was born to me. I'm pulling the crap out of this character, free to play or not. Next is gonna be Yinlin. Yinlin, of course, is going to be tier 0, and you'd be surprised, right? Calcharo's here. Why is Yinlin in tier 0? Yinlin is tier 0 because this character makes anyone like Calcharo just absolutely busted. Her off-field damage is insane. Her on-field damage is also insane, but not as strong as Calcharo, but she makes up for that by being off-field most of the time. Her ERR, so the ability to get her ultimate or her burst, very good, very strong ability to get that very fast, by the way. Her forte skill, the puppet thing, being off-field and it can kind of like do its own thing in a way. That's a crazy strong ability. She's got insane range, massive AoE on a lot of things that she's doing. Her attack animations are fast. She got great cancels. There's a lot about Yinlin that is, for good reason, if you plan on getting Yinlin and Calcharo as a team core, this is the strongest team core in the game as of this moment. Very strong stuff. And when I say team core, I mean you don't need Verina. Adding Verina, in my opinion, ruins this team core and makes it that much slower. I understand that Verina gives you a huge buff. Yinlin gives Calcharo the buff. Like, he doesn't need Verina. That's how strong she is. And then she gives herself the buff. It's ridiculous. All right, so just tier 0. That's all I can say about this character as of right now, especially if you get her Sig, the String Master weapon. Everything that you would want for her kit is in that String Master. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Next is Danjin. Danjin is fishy for me, right? Danjin, if played correctly, very similar to any kind of like high execution character. High risk, high reward. Danjin is tier 0.5. Her damage is great. Her attack speed is insane. She's got great cancels. She's got very strong combos. Her switch tech isn't the greatest, but she does have a unique thing. I believe it's her skill, if I'm not mistaken, or it might just be a flurry of attacks. But she does have a unique switch tech where she does a thing and she's on the field like like kind of like Wolverine does the Berserker Barrage in Marvel games, where he's just slashing forever. She has an ability like that or a skill like that. So just like Marvel, where you pop out Wolverine and he goes Berserker Barrage and he slashes up the enemies a couple times. Danjin also has a skill like that where she takes her sword, he slashes the enemies a couple times while moving forward. You can switch tech that, meaning that you can switch off of her, she'll continue to do her full skill, and then you can have your other character in the back buffing, healing, doing more damage from behind the enemy, all kinds of stuff, throwing them in the air, stunning the enemy. Like if you have Rover, you can time stop so they can't run away. It's a lot of good stuff that you could do with Danjin, but she's a high execution character. That's something that I wanted to point out because I saw a lot of people hyping this character up, saying that, oh yeah, man, Danjin's cracked. She's the best 4-star in the game, yada, yada, yada. He is the best 4-star in the game, but you need to be able to pull this stuff off. If you can't play this character, mind you, I forgot to mention the most important thing about her kit. Danjin sacrifices her own HP to buff herself. Like, so the things that she does backs her own HP. One, if you don't have Verina, which you will get Baizhi for free, but I use Verina because Verina is the one that's like, I heal you while you're attacking, and it's based off my own attack, and it's great. Baizhi, I need to be able to come out, set the board, get the heals off, and then you start getting healing. It takes a lot longer than what Verina would do, and that's why I mentioned Verina over Baizhi, but it doesn't mean that either can't work, right? Just a healer in general. Danjin basically sacrifices her own HP. When you have her teetering on the brink of death at 1 HP, she's the strongest she'll ever be in the game. She's probably the strongest character in the game damage wise, but someone breathes on you the wrong way and you're dead. That's the risk. High risk, insanely high risk, very good reward, high reward. Because of that though, I'm gonna leave her in tier 1 because I know that this is like a 1%, right? The 1% of players playing this character that can take her up here. That's like a 1%. Alto, I want to say it's tier 2, but again, just like Lingyang, I need to test some things. Alto has very similar stuff that I'm talking about with Lingyang, where he dashes through the enemy with the wind. Now during CBT 1, I know that he could not be hit. He was fully invulnerable when he does his wind dash. So after he does his forte skill or his skill, he sets up these tornadoes and like air gates, and then he dashes through the air gate and he's fully invulnerable. It's very fast, and then the dash itself does damage. So CBT 1, he was great. He had that, and any character that has insane movement is usually very good in a fighting game. That's where my basis for that is going right now. But I know in CBT 2, he could be hit. He couldn't be, you can't remove him from the dash, which is still good, but he could still be hit. And that was a little bit problematic because in some of the in-game content, like mid to end game, one tap and you're out of there, right? Even if he could dash through it, if he can't survive or he doesn't have like 90% reduced damage, something like that, I'm gonna have to leave him in tier 3. Chixia I also think is in tier 3. She's just a standard 4-star character, right? There's nothing that really stands out about Chixia that makes me say, yeah, this character's cracked. I think her abilities to help the team are good, but similar to Alto, they just don't have what these other characters have to be able to do a lot. Taoqi is an interesting character. Taoqi is very similar in my mind to a mixture of Danjin and Jianxian. Some of the execution required for Taoqi just feels very weird. Not weird in a bad way, but weird in a very tight execution way. But I know she has a parry, which is similar to Jianxian, but Taoqi's parry from what I tested is very weird. It's not a parry like Taoqi's where, you know, I hit the parry, I hit the move, I take no damage, and then I immediately pop back. Taoqi's parry feels more like I can just hold this forever, and then I let it go, and I still get the same thing that I would have done regardless of if you hit me or not. That could have been a CBT2 bug, I'm not too sure, but that's just how Taoqi feels. I want to say this character minimum would be tier 2, but until I can see what's happening on the live server with this character, whether or not parry functions more like Jianxian's parry, or if it stays the same like this, and she also has very slow attacks. It's just her kit by itself is very good if you were trying to use her again like Jianxian for solo, but I think she fills the role more of like a sub DPS. Both of them really do, but I feel like she fills the role more of like a little bit of a sub DPS. So I want to leave her in tier 3 for now. Mortefi is dumb. Boosting heavy attack damage and 2 of your best characters in the game have heavy attacks is crazy. Also boosting Encore, who has a very good heavy attack that explodes on enemies for a massive range, is ridiculous, and she has insane switch tech behind that. Very good. He's also got solid damage on his own. Very good kit, very supportive kit, but this is, I won't even say supportive. He's like a mini Yinlin in a way, right? Like not giving everything that Yinlin does, but what I mean by that is a sub DPS role. He does his own damage, so off field damage, or maybe like when Calcharo is not on field, your main driver, and you swap in a Mortefi to get everything that you need for the ultimate to swap in directly to Calcharo, things like that. You're not really missing out on damage. He's very strong, to the point where you don't feel like, oh man, I have Verina on the field, she's doing 30 damage versus my Calcharo doing 1600, right? Like Mortefi in this case would be doing somewhere around like 900, 800, maybe 1000, depending on how you build them. So you don't really feel the damage drop off, and it's very good, very strong. And he works with a multitude of characters in the game, in particular Jiyan. Mortefi Jiyan is going to be the combo, right? So if you don't have Calcharo and Yinlin and you're going for Jiyan, you want to grab Mortefi, and it's perfect because Jiyan's banner has the best 4 stars right now. Mortefi, huge. Getting him E4, E6, or S6, whatever, would be huge because sequences just make this character better. Same thing with Danjin, right? Getting her S1, S2, S3, S4, sequences just make her better. So if you are pulling on Jiyan's banner, you have the 2 best 4-star characters in the game. You're golden. Next is going to be Yuan, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Yuan, I believe, is probably tier 2, to be fair. He's got some crazy good mechanic as far as like dropping this pillar, which is, I think it's toughness shredding or shield shredding. And that's unique to him as far as I'm aware of as of right now. But it's really cool. His kit is just awesome, dude. I love his kit. He's a very suave guy, but there's not too much to say about him. He's electro DPS, very fast, very strong hits, but not as strong as Calcharo and not as strong as Danjin or Jianxian, but he does attack faster than Jianxian, so you can make up for that. The pillar has every, I think, 2 or 3 seconds, it does electro damage across this, and the radius is massive, guys. He drops a pillar, the radius is freaking massive. It covers damn near the whole field. So everything in that radius is constantly getting ticked. He works great as far as like a sub DPS goes, to be able to drop that thing and then boom, tick, boom, tick, boom, tick. Every time you do damage, boom, tick. Really good, but it shreds shields. He has a shield shredding mechanic. So I feel like over time we're going to see this character jump up, especially like early week 1 or week 2, maybe like week 3, somewhere between that first month when more people are exploring characters. Yuanwhu is going to jump up from tier 2 and tier 1 in my opinion with more exploration. But as of right now, until I see that and I see more character concepts or team concepts with this character, I'm gonna put him in tier 2 for now. Baizhi, I want to say, is auto tier 2. It's not that she's bad. I think that she's not adequate enough to be anywhere near Verina, and trying to put her in tier 1, it's weird, right? Like she's here. If we were to put her in tier 1, she's here because she's the only one available, right? She's free. Cannot complain about that whatsoever. She gives heals to the entire team. Cannot complain about that whatsoever. And she gives you an attack buff only if you give her the rejuvenating 4-piece glow set. That's the healer set, the relic, the echo set. You're giving her that, and then she gives you an attack buff. Otherwise, she's a direct buffer. So a lot of her kit isn't as phenomenal as we make it out to be. Why do I say that? Well, to be fair, in a skill-based game, if I don't get hit, I don't need a healer, which means I could replace her with anyone else that might directly buff the team, like Yuanwhu, for instance, if I wanted to use him for that, or a Jianxian because I really like the character, I want to play her, and Mortefi because I'm using Jiyan with heavy attacks, you know, anything like that, right? Just reducing the amount of DPS loss is always great, especially if you don't need it. If I don't need to switch into a healer to heal, and I switch into her and she's doing healing and like barely buffing, then yeah, I'm suffering a DPS loss at that point. I could just stay on the DPS character and get the damage out. That's why I have her in tier 2, not a big deal. Sanhua, I think Sanhua is in tier 1. I think this character is great, especially after the buffs for characters like Encore, right? The basic attack thing that I was talking about earlier. I think this character has a unique mechanic with the forte. I think that she has, it's not a freeze per se, but it is more like a hit stop when she dashes through the enemy and then the ice pops up. She does have instances where she can hit stop the enemy. I'm not sure if that's mob specific, if elites can't be hit stopped, or if the overlord bosses can't be hit stopped, but she does have that nice little mechanic. She's got solid damage. She's got good speed. She's got good cancels on her stuff. Her switch tech is a little iffy. I still need to fully explore that. But as of right now, as a sub DPS character, a direct buffer, she's sitting in a very nice spot. And she's also free. Yangyang is tier 2, in my opinion. I think the character is great at a base level, right? Like being basically a Venti or a Kazuha from Genshin Impact, if you're familiar with that, where she has these vortexes when she sucks up the enemy and then pulls them in. I think that's great. I think it's an awesome kid. I think she does good damage. I love the ability that she has to pop multiple enemies up in the air, mind you, pop multiple enemies up in the air. And for me, having a character like, for instance, Jiyan, right? Remember that combo I told you guys earlier where he, you know, up, down, whatever, and then throw him out? That would be perfect. Jiyan starts the combo. He leads him up into the air, brings him back down. You swap into Yangyang with the switch tech. She does her intro skill. She pops them all back in the air. Oh my goodness, bro. And then she has air combos herself. And she also has a tornado with her ult. So if they're already in the air, you ult with the tornado, they stay in the air, you go back into Jiyan, and just, it's so wonderful. So the way that I'm hyping her up sounds like she would be a tier 1 character, right? But it's just damage. That's really all it is. Supportively, I think she's tier 1. but I think the damage output from Yangyang is tier 2, and that's why I have to find like a little weird balance. I didn't want to make a tier 1.5 because then I would get a little too technical, but that's where she is. And yeah, I think we're done, right? I did Spectro. That's crazy. We got that in about 30 minutes. I'm very proud of myself for being able to do that, because normally my tier list videos are about an hour and a half long, but I was able to get this out. I feel very comfortable talking about these characters in Wuthering Waves because it feels way closer to a fighting game, in my opinion, with a lot of the concepts that I have, but it's very good. Before we dip off, let's go ahead and briefly go over what we have. And I want to compare this for what we have going on here with Prydwen. So I have it pulled up so that we can see both at the same time, just so I can go over things, right? So my tier 0, we pretty much have the same characters, Jiyan, Yinlin, and Verina. My tier 0.5, same characters, Encore, Calcharo or Kakara, and then Mortefi. Tier 1, do we have the same? Oh, they have Baizhi in tier 1. Nice. Okay. See, I like that. That's a good difference. We have Sanhua, same character, tier 1. We have Rover, so I do have Rover as well. And then we have Danjin in tier 1. Nice, nice, nice. Tier 2, they have Chixia. Oh, okay, so Chixia is not bad, right? Chixia is doing some good stuff. They believe Chixia is very solid. They don't have anything on top of her though, as far as like what she would be adept at doing, right? But they do have her, I'm assuming, for damage and supportive purposes. In tier 2, they have Lingyang. In tier 2, they have Jianxian. In tier 2, they have Yuanwhu in tier 2, and then they have Yangyang in tier 2. So comparing that to mine, I think all of them are the same, except I have Baizhi, my bad, in tier 2 in replace of Jianxian in tier 1, right? So it looks like we kind of traded them off right there, but I think that's fair to say, right? And then I explained why they were in tier 2 for me. I'm assuming that would be the same reasons they have it. And then in tier 3, they have Alto and then Taoqi. One of the things that I want to end off on the video with would be the weapons. I know, once again, I'm comparing this to Genshin, but I only do this because I know a majority of the players coming are from Genshin, regardless of if the Wuthering Waves community wants to admit it or not. That is what's happening. It's very clear. With the weapons, there's something that I want to point out. 4-star weapons, because I know how we are, right? We don't want to spend money. We don't want to pull on things. And even though we get the standard 5-star weapons for free, basically, let's just ignore that for just a moment. We don't have good 4-star options, or rather, I don't want to say good, great, outstanding 4-star options. The 4-star options right now are just okay. They're adequate. They will get the job done. But once we start seeing these patches come out, new weapons, new 4-star weapons, new craftable weapons, new event weapons, and new 5-star weapons, we're quickly going to see these 4 stars fall off, and they're not going to be doing the same thing that they need to. I will point out though, some of these weapons are not fully explored because the players are not playing the character the way that they want to be played. Let's look at the Amity Accord. Attack is increased by 20% and parry damage is increased by 15 for 8 seconds when dodging or dashing. Restores questionable HP. They don't know the exact number when hitting enemies with parry. Who is this good for? Jianxian, Taoqi, and anyone else that might have a parry, but I know these two in particular have dedicated parries built into their kit. So being able to do that is huge. Now I do know that this probably counts regular parries. So when you see the golden flash around the enemy, that would be great for them. But you also see base defense 14%. Who's scaling off defense? Taoqi. The little things like that are important to pay attention to, because that'll dictate, and I also mentioned that before in one of my previous videos, weapons will probably dictate how we're playing these characters. And I'm a fan of this, right? I'm a huge fan of like the character having a base. This is how you play the character, but then you add new gear like a weapon or a new echo set or even a new echo, and that slightly alters how you play that character. For instance, if you're playing Taoqi and you're not using a lot of parries, or you're playing Jianxian and you're not using a lot of parries, you're using a lot of basic attacks or heavy attacks, equipping a new weapon, even if it's a 5-star and it says blah, 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 parry damage increased by like 50%, that's going to make you play with parries a lot more often. I'm a huge fan. Hopefully you guys are too. That's going to be it. A lot of what I did in today's video was just go over the characters and give you guys some very strong opinions on the launch tier list and why these characters are where they are. And hopefully you understood that. If you didn't, ask your questions down below. I'll do my best to answer that. If you made it to the end of this video, I will be streaming live tonight whenever Wuthering Waves is live. Come through on the Twitch. I'm also doing a giveaway. I know I held that to the end. I should have said it at the beginning, but I completely forgot. We'll be doing a battle pass giveaway up to 10 battle passes, and I'll be doing that the remainder of this week. So until like Friday or Saturday, pretty much when I run out, that's when that'll end. So hopefully that will help you guys out. You can remain free to play. You can still get the battle pass, and then you can get those resources from that, because you're not spending money. I'm the one spending money. So it is what it is. Anyway, I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Like the video, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Smell you later.